Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. Today, we'll explore the tumultuous life of the music legend Rick James. From rumors about his sexuality, relationships with his wife and children, to his abandoned house and tragic death, we'll uncover the untold secrets of Rick James's life. Rick James, a music legend with a mysterious and stormy life. From rumors about his sexuality, family relationships, to his abandoned house and tragic death, all of this creates an unforgettable story. Let's dive into his complicated life. Let's explore the mysterious and tumultuous life of Rick James in this video. From rumors about his sexuality, family relationships, to his abandoned house and tragic death. If you find the story intriguing, don't forget to like and share this video with your friends. Born as James Ambrose Johnson Jr., Rick James initially wasn't interested in joining the war. Fearing being drafted to fight in the Vietnam War, he took matters into his own hands. At 15, he lied about his age and joined the Naval Reserves. But military life didn't suit him. As he recalled in an interview with the Buffalo News, he couldn't stand the discipline and regulations. Instead, he spent his time drumming in jazz bands and experimenting with drugs. In 1964, when he was drafted, Rick James made a bold move. According to Vibe, he flatly told the draft board, "Kiss my ashy black A," and immediately fled to Toronto, Canada. In Toronto, he found himself in the company of future legends like Joni Mitchell and Neil Young. He even formed a band called the Menina Birds, which included Young. Their talent attracted the attention of Motown, and Rick James had the opportunity to perform in front of Stevie Wonder. When Wonder asked his name, James was still evading the military and introduced himself as Ricky James Matthews. Wonder suggested he shorten it to Rick James, a name that would soon become legendary. However, his rebellious storm was far from over. Still a fugitive, Rick James was eventually caught and sentenced to military prison, ending the Menina Birds band. But even as one chapter closed, Rick James was just getting started. Fans of Chappelle's show still laugh uncontrollably at the iconic Charlie Murphy's True Hollywood Stories sketch, where Dave Chappelle plays Rick James and delivers the famous line, "What did the five fingers say to the face? Slap!" before actually slapping Murphy. However, according to Mike Tyson, Rick James's hands had a habit of catching others off guard, including once with Alfonso Ribeiro from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in Tyson's memoir, Undisputed Truth. Tyson recalls a wild night on Sunset Boulevard when he was drinking in a hotel hallway with Ribeiro, who was underage at the time, and Ribeiro's co-star from Silver Spoons, Ricky Schroeder. Tyson estimates that Schroeder was about 17 and Ribeiro about 16, so this event likely happened around 1987. Rick James showed up in his flashy Rolls-Royce, walked up, clapped, and greeted Tyson, then turned his attention to Ribeiro. "You're an actor, right?" before suddenly slapping him in the face. As if that wasn't enough, James also snatched Ribeiro's beer and drank it all. Tyson, despite being the scariest man on the planet, wasn't happy seeing Rick James slap a kid, even though he had no issue with the kid drinking illegally. Rick James famously declared, "Cocaine is a hell of a drug." And if there's ever a moment to prove that, it was the night he almost set himself on fire. 10 years after comedian Richard Pryor accidentally set himself on fire while using drugs, a similar incident occurred with Rick James in 1990 after a concert by MC Hammer. James had just made amends with Hammer, even though Hammer had used James's Super Freak to create You Can't Touch This. Instead of holding a grudge, James actually joined Hammer on stage, a surprising and generous move, especially considering Hammer's oversized pants that could take up half the stage. However, the good vibes didn't last long. Returning home, James decided to celebrate the night in his best-known way, by smoking crack. According to his longtime drug dealer, Race Newman, James tried to burn the rest of the crack in a pipe using a lit plate. But this was a bad decision. While walking with the burning plate, he accidentally dropped it on his robe. Within seconds, the flames spread rapidly across his body, igniting the sleeve. Newman acted quickly, grabbing a bedspread to put out the fire. But in true Rick James fashion, the singer barely reacted. Still smoking, he casually picked up the burning plate and walked into the room as if nothing had happened. It seemed nothing could ruin his fun, not even being set on fire. Rick James and Jim Morrison are both music legends in their own right. James is the king of punk funk, while Morrison is the Lizard King of rock. However, despite each building their career around larger-than-life personas, their paths crossed in a quirky and unforgettable way. In the late 1960s, James was staying at the house of legendary rocker Stephen Stills of Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. One morning, James woke up to find a man sitting cross-legged on the floor, completely still, deep in thought, and bleeding from his wrist. That man was Jim Morrison. James was startled, but Morrison was completely entranced by his wound, staring at the blood dripping from his arm and saying, "Blood is beautiful, isn't it? This is the deepest red you've ever seen." James immediately ran to call Stills, who quickly bandaged Morrison's wound and introduced the two to each other. What followed was a bizarre exploration of Morrison's mind, as he asked James about Motown, recited poetry about dead angels coming back as fans, and lived out the rock star archetypes everyone knows. James, not unfamiliar with the wild side of life, appreciated Morrison's poetic spirit, but he wasn't very impressed by his singing voice. Then came the ultimate rock star test of endurance, a trip to Disneyland. Morrison, James, and their crew thought it would be fun to visit the happiest place on earth, but the security guards didn't agree. Undeterred, Morrison decided to take James on another trip, handing him what he said was candy. In reality, it was LSD, and James was tricked into an intense psychedelic experience. Through it all, James learned an important lesson. A singer's persona is just as powerful as their voice, and when it comes to building personas, no one did it better than these two kings. One of funk, one of rock, and both masters of chaos. If you found Rick James's story intriguing and full of surprises, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to discover more fascinating secrets. Thanks to Dave Chappelle, nearly no one can listen to Cold-Blooded by Rick James without picturing Chappelle portraying James in his iconic Charlie Murphy's True Hollywood Stories sketch with the line, "Cold-Blooded," and slapping Murphy's face. However, in reality, the song isn't about James slapping Murphy. According to James himself in his memoir, Glow, he wrote the song about Linda Blair, the star of The Exorcist, whom he dated in the 1980s. Yet the term cold-blooded carried a deeper meaning for James, especially when reflecting on his short-lived and unsuccessful stint as a pimp. In his memoir, James recalls that while working at Motown as a songwriter, he wanted to make more money. That's when singer Jimmy Ruffin, the brother of David Ruffin from The Temptations, suggested James join him in the pimping business, using their girlfriends for the work. Most people would have refused immediately, but James was no ordinary person. Instead, his conscience led him to Canada, where he and Ruffin decided to give it a try. However, as James recalls, he wasn't cold-blooded enough to be a pimp. James wasn't bad at making money, but he was too compassionate for the job. He didn't force the girls to work when they were tired, even lending them money and standing up to violent clients who mistreated them. Eventually, James gave up, admitting that he didn't have the hardness and cold attitude the profession required. A man known for his wild, unrestrained persona, James's brief career as a pimp showed that even a super freak has its limits. It's hard to imagine Rick James getting into a fight with Prince, considering it's also easy to picture both of them being portrayed by Dave Chappelle in humorous situations. However, according to James, the fight almost happened when Prince was still an up-and-coming artist. Prince had opened for James on a tour, and James had a habit of teasing him. During a birthday party, James recounts grabbing Prince's hair and pouring cognac into his mouth, laughing as Prince choked. But the fun stopped when Prince started taking over the stage, attracting more attention than James, which caused tension between the two. During the 1980 Fire It Up tour, James was not only angry that Prince stole the spotlight from him, but he also accused Prince of copying his entire performance style. Prince was imitating my mic moves like a little boy. He called my name, did my funk gestures, James said. So in his typical Rick James style, he got revenge. According to Pitchfork, when James later opened for Prince, he stole Prince's synthesizers, used them in his album Street Songs in 1981, and then returned them with a simple note: "Thanks." Things almost turned violent after the American Music Awards when James's mother, a big Prince fan, asked for his autograph but was completely ignored. James angrily went to find Prince, whom he referred to as that little guy. Prince's manager had to intervene, and Prince eventually apologized for ignoring James. However, it didn't end there. Prince also took James's girlfriend, Denise Matthews, and began dating her, turning her into a famous pop star under the name Vanity. Now that was truly cold-blooded. Rick James was not only a powerful performer, but also a songwriter and producer who crafted many memorable hits in the 80s. In 1982, he wrote, produced, and performed Standing on the Top for the Temptations, a collaboration honoring the Motown legends who paved the way for him. He also helped Eddie Murphy make a huge impact in his music career by co-writing and producing Party All the Time, a song that became a surprise hit, even though Murphy was primarily known as a comedian. Hopefully, this helped ease the tension from an incident where James accidentally rubbed his shoes on Murphy's sofa. Rick James almost collaborated with another Motown icon, Diana Ross, but his plans changed when he happened to hear an artist who completely caught his attention, Tina Marie. While walking through Motown's headquarters, James heard an amazing voice echoing through the halls. "I heard this girl singing and I was blown away," he recalled. "I went in and said, 'Wow, you're really great.'" He said it was just humility. The range of Marie's voice and her intense emotion astonished him. "I had never heard a voice with such range and such emotion," he shared. Although her talent was immense, Marie hadn't truly made a name for herself in the music industry. That changed when James took her under his wing, produced her debut album, and created a musical partnership that would define both of their careers. Together, they recorded a series of vibrant duets, including Fire and Desire, a song that showcased the undeniable chemistry between them. Their relationship wasn't just professional. It also became romantic, but it turned rocky, and Marie later admitted that they were just too different. "Rick is crazy," she said. "I'm not." Over time, their love turned into a deep friendship, but not the kind of Cersei and Jamie friendship, she explained humorously. Though their romantic relationship ended, they maintained a close friendship. and in 2004, during his final live performance, James and his dear friend took the stage together one last time. Together, they performed Fire and Desire, a meaningful farewell to a collaboration built on passion, music, and an unbreakable bond. The stories of famous stars and their unforgettable encounters involving drugs continue with another interesting night shared between Rick James and Steven Tyler. While many stories about famous stars and drugs are infamous for their wildness, some stand out for their sheer craziness. Many of these encounters end in tragedy, like when James Brown, after using PCP, led police on a wild chase after threatening a room full of people with a handgun, believing someone had used his private bathroom. However, not every meeting under the influence of drugs ends in disaster. Rick James and Steven Tyler bonded over music, drugs, and a rather special accessory, a large Bowie knife. In his memoir, Glow, James recalled that he had always been a fan of Aerosmith, especially their song Dream On. So, when he worked on his 1978 album Come Get It with the band, he was thrilled when Tyler came to hear his music. James played You and I, a funky track that was his big first hit, and Tyler immediately got into it, starting to dance like James Brown, James wrote. After they enjoyed the music, Tyler decided to take the party to another level. He pulled out a large bag of cocaine and a Bowie knife, and the two took turns using the drugs from the blade. Inspired by the night, James felt a surge of confidence and poured all his energy into completing his album. The next time they met wasn't in a studio, but in a rehab center. According to James, Tyler always knew how to make rehab fun, offering quirky advice and even jumping on James's back to go out and have fun. Although both had a history of excess, the two artists left their mark on rock and funk music, proving that sometimes even the wildest moments can lead to greatness. Rick James's mother worked for the Italian mafia, so it's no surprise that Rick James showed a rebellious spirit from birth. His mother often said he was the most troublesome of her 8 children. Some of his antics were relatively harmless, or at least mischievous in an endearing way. Rolling Stone reported that, as a child, Rick James once filled the family bathtub with stray dogs, sprinkled itching powder on his sister's back, and even stuffed a pearl into his brother's ear. However, by the time he turned 13, his mischief had become more serious. He began stealing cars, sometimes for fun, and sometimes to visit girls on the other side of town. Along with car theft, he experimented with heroin and became involved in other criminal activities. Psychologists never deemed him insane, but it was clear that his environment likely influenced his wild behavior. James grew up in poverty with an abusive father who left when he was young. Before he was 8, his mother was a complex figure. She raised the children strictly in the Catholic faith, but also ran an illegal gambling operation for the Italian mafia. James recounted difficult winters, crying as he carried his mother's gambling booklets, which was a strange mix of family love and criminal activity that shaped his early years. In 1991, after his mother's death, Rick James's life took a dark turn. In his autobiography, he admitted that her passing drove him into a deep pit of despair. That same year, he and his girlfriend at the time, Tanya Hijazi, were arrested for a horrific crime. They were accused of binding a female guest at their home, burning her with a crack pipe around 20 times, torturing her with a hot knife, forcing her to take drugs, and performing degrading acts on her. In 1992, while on bail, James and Hijazi were accused of doing the same to Mary Sager, a music director who had known James for 6 years. Sager claimed they beat and strangled her for over 20 hours. By 1993, James and Hijazi were facing trial for both cases. During the trial, James spoke of how he had fallen into severe depression after his mother's death and sought to numb the pain with drugs. However, he denied abusing women, asserting, "I abused drugs, not women." James's case wasn't just about crime and suffering, but also about corruption and mistakes in the legal process. James was acquitted of several charges, but he was ultimately convicted of kidnapping and assaulting Sagar, as well as drug trafficking. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but his sentence was reduced due to misconduct by an investigator. Investigator Craig Gannett, who was involved in James's case, was found to have acted illegally by bribing a key witness to give false testimony against James. As a result, despite serious errors in the case, Gannett was not prosecuted and was allowed to retire without facing consequences. In the 1990s, Rick James went through the darkest period of his life. Despite this, he managed to overcome these challenges, and during his time in prison, he wrote over 300 songs. Although his sentence was reduced, and he only served a little over 2 years, this was not due to good behavior, but because of misconduct in the investigation. In his music career, Rick James also found himself in controversies with other artists, including suing MC Hammer for using his song Super Freak without permission. If Hammer had asked for permission, Rick James would have certainly said, "You can't touch this." "You Can't Touch This" by MC Hammer became one of the biggest hits of 1990 and could be considered one of the most ironically significant rap songs in history. The opening of the song starts with the line, "My music hits me so hard, makes me say, oh my lord," and ends with, "And this is a beat, you can't touch." While Hammer was facing backlash over his music, many other rappers criticized his skills. Rick James sued Hammer because the music in You Can't Touch This wasn't his. The melody that Hammer used was from Rick James's 1981 hit Super Freak without permission. Although Billboard praised Hammer for utilizing a popular hit to capture attention, Rick James wasn't impressed. "I'm not impressed with that SAT stuff," he said. Initially, James wasn't a fan of sampling music, but he later admitted that You Can't Touch This made him appreciate it. However, he clarified that if Hammer had asked for permission, he would have definitely said, "You can't touch this." You can learn a lot about someone from their house, not just whether it's clean or messy, but also about the atmosphere, decor, and energy. A person with a chaotic mind might live in a maze of belongings, or perhaps their space has a minimalist modern style that creates balance and peace. Then there's the kind of space built for long, wild nights, parties, and mind-altering trips. Every wall tells a story, and you can guess that Rick James's house fit this category. Rick James could simply be described as a bad Army. He was a legend in his own right, and although the peak of his career came before many of us were born, his music still remains a staple in our childhood. Vinyl records from his era were spun on DJ setups in high school, and even now the sketches of him from The Chappelle Show still make me laugh when there's nothing else on. He had that kind of presence. His home was as legendary as he was. It was exactly what you'd expect from someone like Rick James, bold, unapologetic, and full of style. The house looked like a fever dream from the 70s, where shag carpets seemed to have taken on a life of their own and flooded every ordinary space. Imagine if the Brady family went astray, took LSD every day, and Marcia started sleeping with rock stars on psychedelic mushroom chairs. Yes, that's what it felt like. Every room had at least 2 types of carpeting, with different textures and colors, like Van Gogh designed it without patience. It was a completely wild style, but in the best way possible. You would walk into a room with a pool that seems way too small for the space, almost like someone just shoved it in there for fun. It's like they decided to add a pool into Grandma's ranch-style house. There's carpet along one side of the concrete wall, a design choice that only Rick James could pull off. But let's be honest, those pools weren't meant for swimming or working out. They were probably built for fun, if I had to guess. The chemical bills to keep these playgrounds clean must have been pretty expensive. I also kind of love the fact that some rooms looked almost identical, only differing in color. It's like Rick couldn't choose between two shades, so he just said, "Screw it. Make another room exactly like this, but in a different tone." And if we believe the sketches on Chappelle's show, where Rick wears his dirty boots everywhere, I can't imagine what the person cleaning that mansion every week must have gone through. Rick brought the outdoors right into his carpeted house. The final bedroom seems to be decorated with leftover items from a glowing mini golf course. I can imagine Aaron Rodgers spending 10 days in there, sitting aimlessly on mushrooms and contemplating his next move in his football career. Every morning he probably wakes up, brushes his shiny hair, and gives himself a pep talk in the mirror. I deserve good things. I have the right to be happy. I refuse to blame myself. I'm attractive. I'm funny. Because let's face it, Aaron Rodgers is just Stuart Smalley trying to act cool. You can't hang a giant heart-shaped light over a pink bed without expecting wild nights. That bed, oh, it's witnessed some things. It's probably really seen some things. After all, Rick James is a super freak. So was Rick James gay? Over the years, rumors about Rick James's sexual orientation have surfaced in the media and conversations, many of which seem to stem from societal stereotypes or assumptions based on his bold stage persona and extravagant fashion choices. However, despite all the chatter, there's no clear evidence to suggest that Rick James ever identified as gay or bisexual. Rick James had 2 children with Seville Morgan, a former singer and songwriter, a daughter named Tienza, and a son named Rick Jr. In the early 80s, James dated actress Linda Blair after reading an interview where she called him sexy. He reached out to her and they spent time together during a short vacation at the Chateau Marmont in Hollywood. During their relationship, Blair became pregnant and decided to have an abortion. In his memoir, James wrote about the pain of her decision, sharing, "I loved Linda, and I was heartbroken when she chose to have an abortion without discussing it with me first. I still look back on her choice with sadness, wondering what our child would have been like and how having that child might have changed my life." His hit song, Cold-Blooded, was inspired by this relationship, with James describing it as a reflection of how Linda could make my blood freeze. In 1989, James met Tanya Hijazi, a 17-year-old girl, at a party. The two began a relationship and had a son named Tasman in 1993. After both served time in prison for assaulting Mary Sager and Francis Alley, they married in 1993 and divorced in 2002. James was also very close to Tina Marie, with whom he started collaborating in 1979. They had a professional relationship that lasted for decades. Tina Marie once shared that they got engaged within 2 weeks. Their collaboration continued until 2004, when Marie released her comeback album, Ladonia, which included their duet song, I Got You. When Rick James passed away, Tina Marie was deeply saddened by the loss and later revealed that she struggled with painkiller addiction after his death. On the morning of August 6, 2004, Rick James was found dead by his caregiver at his home in the Oakwood Tuca Hills apartment complex near Burbank, Los Angeles. He was 56 years old at the time. His longtime spokesperson, Sugata Murthy, confirmed his death and stated that the cause was due to natural health issues, including diabetes, a previous stroke, a pacemaker, and a heart attack. An autopsy revealed multiple substances in his system, including alprazolam, Xanax, Diazepam, bupropion, Wellbutrin, sertraline, Zoloft, hydrocodone, dioxin, digitalis, chlorpheniramine, methamphetamine, and cocaine. However, the coroner noted that none of these substances reached levels that would have been fatal on their own, but rather as a result of their combination. After holding a public visitation for fans, a private memorial service was held at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills. A public funeral ceremony took place on August 14, 2004, at St. John Baptist Church in Buffalo, New York, with approximately 6,000 fans in attendance. Following the funeral, Rick James was cremated, and a memorial concert was held later that day at Martin Luther King Park. His ashes were then buried at Forest Lawn Cemetery in Buffalo. Rick James left an undeniable mark on the music world, with one of his greatest honors being his induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2015. This recognition highlighted his profound impact on the funk and R&B genres, as well as his overall contributions to the music industry. His distinctive style and iconic hits continue to be celebrated by fans and fellow artists, ensuring his lasting place in music history. With a life full of ups and downs and untold secrets, Rick James remains a legend in the hearts of his fans. Although the scandals and tragedies have come to an end, his musical legacy lives on. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss out on the next exciting videos.